All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. The conversation continues even during the break. And however, you wanted to react to what Joshua said.
We're having more robust debates outside.
Off camera. That's what I was about to say. I wanted to record this and play it. It was fantastic. But let's come back to that.
No, what I was saying is that I think the argument that Joshua had brought about that, the president and the deputy president in 2013, because of TNA, URP, coalition agreement, we are sharing power, is anomalous. It should not have happened because the Constitution does not, in letter, say so. In principle, in spirit, the question of working together, and I agree, the question of politics is important because each comes with a constituency.
Yeah.
But the point is, we are talking about service delivery, not management of egos. Yeah. No, that's the problem. That's the problem we're having in this country. We play politics for 5 years. Somebody goes on a campaign trail from the beginning of the time they are supposed to be serving citizens up to the end, and we say that there was this kind of disrespect and all that. Where are we as citizens? And that's my argument, that if the president and the deputy president come in as one ticket, one is supposed to principally assist the other.
Yeah.
And that's what Professor was saying, that it's a principal assistant, not, what did you say, the other one?
No, it is Joshua was saying principal assistant, not co-principal.
Not co-principal.
Yeah. Yes.
So we are seeing the journey from 2013 up to now has actually been like a journey of co-principals. Ukinikasirisha, bas, mimi naenda kupiga siasa weka.
Yeah.
Do your business. And then ukienda, me I get somebody else to work with.
Yeah.
You can't play that at the national level.
Okay.
And that's the problem that we're having. The governance question should be about service delivery to Kenyans.
Yeah.
Because when these two people go at loggerheads, we don't get development, we don't get accountability. Ruto right now says, go and ask the president. Right now he's saying the lowering of prices of Unga, it is not his business. It is in government. Okay. You see, the point is, he may have legitimate concerns and legitimate issues, but how does that concern service delivery?
Okay.
May I quickly respond to that? However, you're right on the question of service delivery. But governance is fundamentally about representation. It's about having a seat at the table. This is why you have these coalition agreements. You don't expect somebody who's come with half the votes to be inconsequential. So you have a coalition agreement with this individual, you should respect it. And so I think our focus should then be, what is it about, if you're talking about Jubilee, what is it about their coalition agreement that did not allow the two principals to manage their differences in an amicable way?
Yeah.
And so I think even in the media we should be giving more prominence to interrogating these coalition agreements, because it is inevitable. Yes, the Constitution is not clear on these political party coalitions, but they're a fact of life. It is how politics is played in this country.
Yeah.
You'll never have any government, I think, moving forward without these strong coalitions.
Okay. Let's talk about something else.
Maybe just an answer to that, Kidogo, as I answer the second question. I wanted to answer Prof on that because he's raised a question. Then what happened? Because this was a political coalition between two parties, and expectation of either party was a continuity of first term, where we shared positions, there was shared responsibility. Do you remember the camaraderie that we saw in 2014 when the president was leaving for ICC, and there was an aspect of handing over? Look at the symbolism that went into it, and the sense of feeling by the deputy president to be part of a government, and ministers being answerable to the deputy president. That's why the first time went so well. So where did it go wrong? The answer is simple. Because they shared power, because they shared responsibility, the entry of the opposition in form of Raila Odinga, in form of handshake, meant that the Ruto wing felt that they had been elbowed out, because president inviting another party into government without necessarily giving positions, without necessarily giving PSS or CSS, was like, then what is our responsibility? What happens to what we've been doing in the first term? Okay. Does our agenda change? That is the answer.
There are some people saying that this went south because of state capture, and this is what the candidates had to say in regards to state capture. Listen.
In a manifesto that you would put a commission to investigate these crimes. Would you go after the first family?
We will not go after anybody will go after all those who are in state capture and conflict of interest.
Who are they?
But what are you saying?
That will come out in the commission. I'm saying there will be a commission because the real corruption that we need to deal with, not what Honorable Mala is talking about, is state capture and conflict of interest, where the people in power have used their offices to usurp public resources to their advantage and to the disadvantage of the rest of Kenyans. You are aware that the milk industry has been monopolized by state capture and conflict of interest, where the owners of that monopoly decide how much to buy from the farmers and how much to sell to the consumers.
So, Honorable.
And extort the people of Kenya.
Clarity for the Kenyans who are watching.
Yeah.
At the center of government is President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Yes.
Are you going to go after President Uhuru Kenyatta finishes his term?
I have said we are not talking about individuals. We'll deal with state capture and conflict of interest. Anybody who is involved in state capture and conflict of interest will be held to account.
The first family, sir. So grab the bull by its horns. Don't perhaps cut around the issue. You are talking about the first family. So in essence, you are saying you will go after them. Isn't that?
I am saying this is state capture. I've given you an example. You will feel for yourself what needs to happen.
All right.
And I am saying that is what we need to deal with. You know, state capture. And that is why the president will say he is lenient. He cannot deal with state capture. He cannot deal with conflicts of interest.
Okay.
He can't.
Thank you very much.
I want to help Mr. Gachagua. State capture is the repurposing of the state to serve individuals rather than public good. And corruption cartels in this country, whoever they are, have strangled the country. I opened by saying Kenya can't breathe. Our health services, their money is taken. The money for agriculture, for fertilizer subsidies, money for building dams such as Kimwerel, Arol, Galana Kuraru, which was supposed to help Kenya feed itself. That is what state capture is about, that every penny intended for the public, a majority of it is ending up in people's pockets. This is not about families or individuals. It's cartels, and cartels are organized people, gangs of criminals, because what they are doing is committing crime. And you don't need a commission to punish crime. You just need serious law enforcement. And if you find roadblocks, that cases are taking too long, then Parliament can be used to do its work, to consider proposals from the government, to pass laws that fast-track such cases. We all know that election petition cases take 6 months. Why can't corruption cases similarly take such a period?
Prof, is that where our Achilles' heels lies, state capture and conflict of interest?
I think it's much worse than the picture they painted.
Yeah.
From my research, last year I was doing research for part of a continent-wide project on what is called democracy capture. And from what I have seen from my research, it goes way beyond state capture. Because you see here, you're talking about repurposing the state's public goods for private
interest.
Yes, for selfish interest or just for the interest of a few. But democracy capture is a much larger phenomenon. It facilitates state capture, and it entails capturing all the institutions of accountability. You capture the legislature, you capture the electoral commission, you capture the judiciary, you capture the office of the Auditor General, you capture the DPP. And how does it happen? It happens through various mechanisms that we see.
Yeah.
You co-opt these entities, you control their appointment and dismissal processes. I'll give you a very good example. So we thought that we had tamed, that we wanted to be able to say, in this country, let us hire the best for whatever public jobs we have. And so we have selection panels, in the case of the Judicial Service Commission, we have an institution that has different stakeholders that are supposed to be telling us, well, we have selected the best. But invariably, these people never tell us what processes they have used to select individuals. And I know for a fact that some of the arithmetic in terms of the tabulation of so-and-so gave this candidate so many marks, another one so many marks, it doesn't add up.
Never made public.
Because it's never published. So we get a veneer of transparency. We don't get transparency. So you have a situation where somebody gives a candidate 40%, another one gives a candidate 90%. And I'm an academic. That never happens. Even when there are variations in grading, we will ask ourselves, how is it that one person gets 40%, which gives an individual 40%, and the same individual gets 90% from a different individual?
Yeah.
So there's no credibility in our hiring processes.
Okay.
And so in terms of democracy capture, you make sure that you have your candidates by manipulating the appointment processes. Okay. We infiltrate these institutions. We don't give them resources. Yeah. So when we do all of that, then we make it very easy to capture the state. Okay. And these are the things that Kenyans need to be addressing when we are looking to be asking. When you're looking at the manifestos of the leading parties, we need to be asking them, because they're both talking about well, we have state capture. Yeah. We're going to address it, but we need specifics. How are we going to address democracy capture as well, so that we're able to ensure that we have institutions of accountability that actually work? Okay.
Yes. Was this question answered sufficiently from your view? And is it our problems?
I think, and this one thing I want to credit the candidates, and specifically Kenya Kwanza has brought it and made it a center of attention. State capture, and Prof has mentioned it so well. They only touched the tip of the iceberg. One of the biggest discovery that you can make is that our biggest governance problem is the idea that the regulator, who in this case is government in various forms, especially in sectors like agriculture, is actually a competitor or a player. So that you would want to do regulation on matters pricing, on matters demand and supply, and you are part and parcel of it. So my understanding captures what Prof has said. It starts with even democratic capture in terms of appointive positions. Someone is appointed in a position with a specific assignment. And what we see is basically a facade, a charade, whereby the panels and everything are basically for the media and for the PR, but they have a specific task, whether a board or anything. So what I'm happy is that, and I think Rigathi Gachagua was trying to bring that aspect. The only difference is how the two groups would wish to engage with that. Let me compare the visions of the two. The Kenya Kwanza team has said the magnitude of the problem would need a commission. They are using the long route of doing a commission of inquiry so that we have recommendation and execute. Number two, the Deputy President has been on record saying ours is to let independent institutions work, not interfere. Let them be. Let the judiciary be. And that's why you find them saying we'll operationalize the judiciary fund. We will appoint the judges that were not appointed, because that is what is expected of law. So their route is two-pronged. Do commission and let institutions work. That's why you don't find, for example, Kenya Kwanza belaboring so much on say how they'll fight corruption. They'll tell you the moment we let institutions work, it works. That is way of disengaging from the state capture. Then Azimio comes with a different aspect, and I call it short-circuiting, where Martha Karua mentioned and say, I don't need to do a commission. I just need to enforce the law. What does the law say? The law says each institution is supposed to do this. A government should do 1, 2, 3. And our problem is governance issues on matters corruption and graft. Let us enforce the law. You are corrupt. You are using your respective position to enrich yourself and have the conflict of interest. We deal with you. And she's been trying to sell the agenda that you can trust me on matters governance. Yeah. I'm strong on it. I'm principled. So ideally, what I'm happy is we've made this an agenda. The only challenge yesterday, the moderators didn't pursue that line. In fact, with the moment Martha Karua defined it and Rigathi Gachagua was giving solution, I felt it was a room, it gave the moderators a room to open up that discussion and say, let us be specific. And Prof has mentioned it. They would have answered the issue of appointive power. Let me give an instance and you'd understand this. Now that the president holds appointive powers, even in independent commissions, one of the things that we've never been able to discuss and debate, have you ever done an audit of appointive positions since 2010? Now that the JSC, for example, does interviews, have you ever questioned? Have you ever gone back? And Prof, I remember this thing I think has come up in legal classes. We asked this question, have we ever asked the JSC to give us the scorecard? And actually interrogate and say, how was this person allocated? Or we just said, we found Prof with 92%, and his colleague, we gave him 50%, because I'm inclined to like Prof, because I know him.
Yeah.
That is already the capture. So I think yesterday there was a missed opportunity of interrogating further, but I'm happy either of the coalition have made it an agenda. The only difference, as Emil says, for us, we reinforce the law. Corruption is a form of state capture, we'll enforce. Kenya Kwanza has said it is a wholesome problem. We need a commission, we need independent institutions to work.
Okay, Karibu of the two, who has a point?
I think Trevor, on this show, I think you need to invite people from both sides. Unfortunately, Joshua is alone. He's beating the drum on one side alone. But the point...
We will try to represent the other side.
No, I think we should not in this debate just reduce the two sides. Let's represent Kenyans. For once, who stands with Kenyans? Because when Joshua stands with Kenya Kwanza, the energy you feel is like, who will stand on the other side? But that's not, I think, what the essence of this debate. This debate is, for me, on the debate yesterday about state capture, was that nobody seems to have thought through the whole question of state capture. It was... You know, like the way, Prof, you being a teacher, you know this. When students are able to repeat and regurgitate the things that, you know, have been said in class or they have read and understood and therefore are able to postulate. Because nobody, including the moderators, was able to delve in that question. Because that, for me, is, and Prof has said this, is the central thing that has destroyed this country. Why? When we had the imperial presidency from the 60s up to even Mwai Kibaki time, the closer you were to the presidency, the closer you were to power, the more benefits you got. And I think that's what the Constitution 2010 tried to kill, to say, you don't have to be close to it. I don't have to know Professor Migai Kate to get something that I deserve, that I have merit to get.
We call it the rule of law.
Yes.
Yes.
So that is the essence of capture. That unless you know so and so, unless you are able to access so and so, then you cannot. Because so and so controls state machineries, controls state power, and all that. If you go to today, go to the independent commissions that are anticipated in Chapter 15 of the Constitution. They don't work. Go to Parliament from 2013 up to 2018, because of that tyranny of numbers and also the control. The two principal leaders in the coalition had majority in Parliament. Parliament stopped working. They literally stopped because unless I'm otherwise educated, they did not represent the people that they are supposed to represent. Otherwise, we will not be having a debt of 10 trillion today if they were serious on the job. If we take that as an example. You look at the other institutions of service delivery, they were not working. So we end up with a situation where what we wanted to defeat, that you get into offices of government, you become rich, you become indifferent, and then after you amass wealth, you go to political power, has continued over time. And this is what we need to kill. This is the dragon we need to slay. And that question must be debated again afresh, even if you are going to debate it as Kenyans. How do we ensure systems work? How do we ensure that we implement the Constitution without posturing? Because the thing about posturing, saying, hey, it's state capture, and you ask them, you say, stop, just tell us, what does it mean in simple language? Does it mean if I have education, and therefore I merit to get a job,
Yeah.
But I'm not professor's son. I can still get the job. Is that what it means?
Okay.
Yeah.
Prof, you wanted to react?
I wanted to add on to what he's saying.
Yeah.
In terms of the need for us to appreciate that governance occurs in one of two ways that interact.
Yeah.
We have informal ways of exercising governance or power, if you wish, and formal ways. When you have a constitution, you're talking about the formal ways of doing it. But life doesn't work like that. Typically, a lot of the things we do in life are informal. I know so-and-so knows the other. We have resources. We can get things done just on the ability of our networks, for example. And that has been the challenge in this country, because state capture is not something, or democracy capture, as I prefer to look at it more broadly, is not something that started yesterday.
Yeah.
It's something that has been built from colonial times. The infrastructure is there, it is resilient. You see it in both manifestations of it in state institutions, in the private sector, in the bureaucracy, the public service as well. And so these people, they work together.
Okay.
They know one another. So until we deal with that, and our constitution is then superimposed on this informal system of governance. So it's not going to be easy to deal with it. Okay. But I think exposing it is a good start to be able to tell citizens that, look, there's a way of doing things in Kenya.
Okay.
Which is what Kawive is saying, that unless you know so-and-so, even today, you're simply not going to say that, oh, I want to be a judge and become a judge. Even today, with the Constitution of 2010. Or that I want to become the Auditor General, and you'll just apply, and we expect that, well, a merit will prevail, the rule of law will prevail, and we'll pick the best candidate. These informal systems of governance will be asking, is this our person? Can we work with this person? Will this person protect our interests? Those are the things that, as citizens, we need to be asking and exposing.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Gito, before you talk about wealth declaration. Yeah.
I think maybe I had just a small rejoinder to Kawive. I think I've tried... Kawive. Maybe you didn't capture this. I've tried to give how each of the coalition sought to answer the question. And that's why I'm saying the only difference is that if you track the last 3-4 months, and like Azimio, Kenya Kwanza has made it a major campaigning platform. Until I remember even yesterday there was a question whether they are targeting the first family. Why is that the case? Because they have made it a center and a pillar of the campaign that we seek to go for the issue of conflict of interest and state capture. The only thing I was adding was, how far did the debate yesterday expose the same? And importantly, how much did we interrogate? That's why with a fair of objectivity, I was able to pick out Martha Karua's answer. And I said, theirs is a clear cut. Them, according to Azimio, we are going to fight corruption, which summarizes the issue of state capture. Whereas you would find the Kenya Kwanza team saying, no, not just fighting corruption, but rather let's do a commission. And that's why you could see Martha Karua saying, I don't agree with the idea of a commission. It's unnecessary. We have the law, we have the institution, let's do it. Whereas Kenya Kwanza comes and said, no, it's bigger than that. We first need to interrogate and make Kenyans aware. So you find the disparity of the two opinions.
Okay. But Trevor, if I may very quickly, to be fair to Azimio, I think they're saying some interesting things about fighting corruption. For example, and it's in their manifesto, and I think Martha Karua spoke to it yesterday, the idea that we should resolve corruption cases quickly.
Yeah.
It was, the interesting thing is that this was in the BBI bill, which she opposed. But nevertheless, there is that agenda that let us resolve these things quickly.
Yeah.
So that somebody like Gachagua, who claims that he's being prosecuted, can either be acquitted or found guilty legitimately.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense.
Okay, one of the other issues that came up was the issue of wealth declaration. And there was a public wealth declaration. This is what the candidates had to say.
I think about just about
150 million, and that is because the 56 million I had declared in 2013 has appreciated because of the inflation. I haven't had any new properties, but I'm a person many may not understand. I'm not thirsty for land. I'm not thirsty for worldly goods. I'm happy to have a house I call home. I'm happy to have a house in my father's land. I do not look for property. Not everybody is hungry to amass. I'm hungry to do something to help my country to transform the lives of the people. Right. So if you're looking for Martha Karua to be a billionaire, no, I am not hungry for billions.
Honorable Gachagua,
my account did not receive 5 billion. That is propaganda. I have 200 million. That is the money that is held. 200 million, 64 million. I worked in the Ministry of Lands and Settlement. 10 million, I worked in Kenya Power. 33 million, I worked in the Ministry of Livestock. Another 46 million, I worked in another organization called Patek. Up to 200 million, that is all the money. But when you set policemen to investigate, they don't understand accounts. When you save money in a fixed deposit, it leaves your personal account into a suspense account. A normal policeman looking at it, movement in and out 4 times a year of 200 million, he thinks you have 800 million within that year. So when he multiplies by 7 years, he says you have 12.4 billion. That is the folly of the kind of investigations we are having in this country. I don't have billions, I have 203 million into that account. And that is part of my wealth. I'm worth 800 million, minus the 200 they are holding, another 600.
Yeah, many would say those are mind-boggling figures to begin with, as much as they're just throwing them around. But were you satisfied with the response of the Wealth Declaration? And is this where our solution lies going forward, that we know how much the leaders are worth, so that you can measure it when they're out of office, whether they accumulated wealth that is unexplainable?
You know, listening to them in itself is interesting. But going back to the fact, the Constitution anticipates that one, would get to become a leader, declare what you have, and then secondly, do not have what are called hidden accounts or accounts abroad and all that. That's requirements of Chapter 6. Yeah. It is there. But actually, the Wealth Declaration, it began with Kibaki's time, but it was reduced to a joke. Yeah. It's like the EACC clearance. You go fill a form, it is taken, nobody evaluates it, nobody says what has been written, and it is not publicly declared that this is the wealth, whether in the country or outside the country. The biggest problem that we have in this country from our leaders is that, one, becoming a leader, joining politics has become almost like a way of money laundering. You get in there, you get money, and you don't need to explain because you are a big person. You know, you're in kiongozi, so you can have money. So they use that opportunity to make money, which either they do not put in the bank, because most of these leaders do not have a lot of money in the banks. They have their money in properties. They get their money and whatever it is, they buy properties. And we do not have a system of identifying which property is owned by who, where, and how did they get it. Mm. So if we have that, then we can be able to say this is what you are worth. And what are called companies, some faceless companies, which can be opened in different countries, and which do not directly lead back to the leader. So if that secrecy around property and ownership is declared, and is rather not declared, is cleared, so that we know who owns what at what point, it will be very important. Right now in counties, and you've worked in a county, I have worked in a county, we've seen people get into counties riding small cars, and in 5 years build big houses, build whatever estates and stuff like that. How do they make their money? Yeah. Where do they make their money from? That tracking of the growth of wealth for public officials must be there. And I think this was a good beginning, where they say, this is what I'm worth. Although it is not clear whether Rigathi has got 800 or 200. Yeah. So I think at the end he's 800 and then minus the 200. So, but that is a very good beginning point. Yeah. Can we have our leaders just say what it is that you own? legitimately.
Right.
Can that information be collaborated and then made public?
Okay. Prof, should we depend on institutions to ensure this is adhered to? Is it the institutions that are failing us because they are not capable of keeping track of anybody who comes and declares this is what they are worth at the end of it all? What are you worth and how did you acquire it?
No, first of all, just reacting to the statements of the two candidates, deputy presidential candidates yesterday, I really admire Martha Karua's approach to public life, because for her it's not about wealth, it's about service.
Yeah.
And I think that could never be said too many times. I mean, we have to keep saying that over and over again. So I really commend her for saying that. And I think in that respect, she's a very good role model for young people in this country. Having said that, in terms of whether this relates to institutional failures, I don't think it is. It goes back to the capture of institutions. I do a lot of research on corruption in this continent. And what I found is that compared to the rest of Africa, for example, we have some of the best laws, if not the best law, on corruption, and the best infrastructure for fighting it. I'm talking about whether you're talking about asset tracing and declaration, you're talking about lifestyle audits, you're talking about financial reporting, you're talking about witness and whistleblower protection.
Yeah.
We even have alternative dispute resolution in terms of negotiating with the corrupt and telling them, but you know, if you return this, we will let you be.
Yeah.
So it is a question, and I think both parties are talking about it.
Yeah.
It is a question of letting the institutions work. It is a question of giving these institutions the necessary resources. I don't think we need more laws.
Okay.
Or that, on this, I think I would agree with Martha Karua, that we need a commission of inquiry. To just give you an example of why this works, in the recent past, I think the two or so months, we've been we've been told stories of 2 or 3 former public servants. I remember one, he was an official in the Ministry of Lands, who's now in court and is being asked to explain how he got his wealth. So the infrastructure to be able to do that repeatedly and for everyone on the basis of the rule of law exists. The question is, why don't we use it?
Yeah.
And why don't we use it relates to the selective deployment of the infrastructure, which then relates to state capture or democracy capture, more broadly speaking.
Okay.
So that is a question that we need to
so it's about strengthening
address.
the institutions for
it. It is about strengthening. It's about allowing them to work. Allowing them to work.
In the law.
And stopping these things that stop institutions from working.
Okay.
Give them the resources. Make sure that we appoint the right people.
Okay.
And Kenyans have to be more demanding of transparency, because as I keep saying, we get a veneer of transparency for every appointive position.
Yeah.
We don't get transparency. We are not told that, look, this is a criteria that we used. These are the scores.
Yeah.
And
the overall winner emerges.
These are the reasons for our decisions. We shouldn't just be given decisions.
Yeah.
We should be given reasons for decisions, for appointment decisions that make sense.
Okay.
If they don't make sense, then we must be able to go to court and say that, please go back.
Okay.
We did not get the right person.
Right.
Because also when you don't get the right person,
yeah,
you're able to manipulate the people that you have appointed wrongly, because they owe you.
Okay.
And that way, the institutions will never work.
Okay. Joshua?
Yes.
My answer will be from experience. Any state officer or public servant has to declare and has to fill a form, wealth declaration, every single year. All of us have done it. Since I became a speaker, or even before I served as a tutorial fellow at the university, that was an expectation. And we have done the basics or the bare minimum up to that level. Something Prof has captured, it's about enforcement. And how far has our enforcement gone into the idea of making account of public officers or state officers or public leadership on matters wealth declaration. I want to acknowledge a shift, however small. I want to be optimistic based on what has happened. I don't know if you remember the case of former Nairobi executive who served as a chief of staff, Kiamba. Look at the nature of his case, how it snowballed from a fight with the SEC, and we had two agencies applying to be enjoined, Asset Recovery Authority as well as KRA. And at the end of the day, the case morphed into a question of, can you justify these sums of money in your account? This is your salary. You earn 160,000. How comes we have around 328 million? Have you paid taxes for that? So that was the first time, I think it was in 2014, under Dr. Evans Kidero's government in Nairobi City County. From that time up to now, every now and then on newspapers and in our courts of law, you never fail to encounter a situation where ARA, that is the Asset Recovery Authority, applying for freezing for junior officers at the Ministry of Land, at the departments, at the parastatals, at the county governments. So I want to appreciate that the fact that the wheels of justice have started to work. Yeah. Institutions have commenced the process. In fact, at the moment, Trevor, from experience as a public officer, your biggest nightmare is when you are faced with whatever case in court, and then EACC invites itself into the matter, because EACC will go back to the documents you've been declaring year in, year out. They may appear harmless, they may appear not to matter, until and when the matter becomes an issue of a court's jurisdiction. Yeah. And anytime I have seen EACC on the table, ARA is never far away from it, and KRA rides on it. Yeah. Because when ARA and EACC brings it to the table and say, we have an engineer in Kura who earns 150,000. We've done a calculation over 6 years he's worked here. The most amount of money he can have is this amount. How comes he has assets worth around 48 million? KRA shows up and say, good, we have no issue with your money. Yeah. This 48 million, over 6 years. Have you paid taxes for it? Yeah. How did you acquire them? Where are the company records? We want to see returns. So I want to be optimistic and say, and Prof has captured it so well. Yeah. How far do we go? Okay. How much follow-up mechanism do we have? Are we just targeting the bottom tier and the middle tier public officers and state officers, and leave the upper echelons of power? Okay. And one of the problems is that this question we only raise during elections. Yeah, then it is. After the debates, after the election, it's over. 27, we'll come back at it.
One of the other questions that is raised during elections is campaign financing. And this is what the candidates had to say in terms of how they're financing their campaigns right now, to speak.
You all are traversing the country with choppers and legions of teams. How do you finance your campaign?
Well, it's difficult because we don't have a centralized command. Our campaign, we are raising funds from people, and mostly is in materials, is in donations in terms of choppers, in terms of vehicles, in terms of fuel, in terms of personnel. And really, what you need in terms of cash is not much. This campaign of Kenya Kwanza is bottom-up driven. A lot of hustlers have taken time to give their all in terms of time, in terms of materials, in terms of support in kind. There isn't much about cash. So it's very difficult at this stage to quantify and say, this is the amount that we are going to use for this campaign. What I know is that in the next 1 week or so, we'll now be talking about real figures, because we have to mobilize agents, we have to mobilize vehicles, we have to get people to protect the vote. Those people need to be given allowances. That is when now we will come to the cost of the real campaign.
All right, well, Martha Karua, the same question. How do you finance your campaign?
Through public donations in cash and kind. We had a fundraiser just the other Friday, but the donations are a continuous process. The Azimio campaign secretariat is keeping tab. My personal campaign organization, the New Dawn Trust, is also keeping tab of all donations coming to me. And it is the organization that had received the money you asked earlier for BAT. I do not mix campaign money with my own funds, because you have to maintain integrity even with donations. We have choppers donated. There is a chopper I personally use, which is a donation from a kind corporate friend. and we have many such donations. And I want to remind Kenyans, my captain, the Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, has had choppers in his campaign, even when he was out of government. Like the 2007, I think they flashed more choppers than the PNU side I was in that could have. He is a man known for his capability to mobilize resources, both human and financial, for campaign.
Kawiva, were you satisfied with that response?
I think it is a me against you kind of response. So if I say it's from the public, you have to prove me wrong, or you have to have other information, because we really cannot know. But as a matter of fact, the possibility or the probability that a person who is going into campaign at that level will have own resources that they deploy for that, even if it's in an initial stage, is critical. I think what we may want to ask is, because now they have said it is public funds, can we have a public declaration of what funds came in, how was it used, and all that, so that then we know. We need to have a public record of what happens, because they are public funds and it is not their funds, so that then we can be able to account. And that is important. And it answers your question about also the question of wealth, so that we see how much of your personal wealth have you put into the campaigns, and therefore how much are you going to recoup. So, because that is where we miss it as a nation. We are not able to say, if you are campaigning for MCA or MP or whatever position, how much of your personal money do you put in, and how much so are you worth before you go in, and how much do you get out of that position worth? And there should be a system, I think, for all, and especially for members of parliament, to get a way of a body or something, that some institution that checks them. Because them being the makers of the law and the oversighters of the government have a way of running away and hiding from that accountability. I think that's critical. But for this, I mean, the whole idea of crowdsourcing funds is the first step to ending over individual investment in political processes that are not supposed to benefit you personally. Proverbs said their political positions are about providing leadership, not about amassing wealth. But now we have to interrogate this first and see how much of this has happened, and therefore how much of public spiritedness of the campaigns should we find or see in what is happening.
But Prof, this is one of the reasons why illicit financial flows have been so difficult to keep track of. What is the best way of ensuring that campaign financing is on record? Because most of these politicians, in fact, people have always complained that the amount of money they spend to ascend to office is not commensurate to the money they will earn while they are there.
Which is very true. So first of all, I found it interesting when Martha Karua was saying that she has a chopper that is donated by a kind corporate friend. And as you and I know, these corporate friends, they're never kind. As in, they're not doing these, it's not altruistic. They're doing this because they expect that they'll get something in return, something in the form of jobs for their people, something in the form of favorable policy, something in the form of government contracts, etc. So I was not happy with the responses from the two, because they are not true. There's no honesty from both of them on this point, because we know they get funds from certain quarters, certain corporate quarters and individuals. So when they're talking of fundraisers, who are in at these fundraisers, and what do they want
in return?
And as Kawive was saying, I think the answer is what you say. You must tell us, and this happens in other countries as well. You must give us a record of each and every single coin that you have received from the public. And in other countries, they also cap the amount that you can get from an individual, because that is how you corrupt the democratic system. It means your vote will count. As soon as I give 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 100 million shillings, my vote will count more than the vote of the person that does not give that money. So that
What do you
means,
mean by that?
What I mean by that is that votes are supposed to count equally.
Equally, yeah.
But as soon as I give money in addition to my vote, I am buying influence.
So you expect some kind of reciprocity?
I will get influence much more than the person that did not give that money. So it means we are also distorting the democratic process. Yeah. And that is why campaign finance is regulated, so that there is a fair playing field for everyone, so that we can access government equally. We cannot access government equally if somebody already has 100 million at the door of a presidential candidate. It will never happen. And so that is why these countries require that you must tell the public each and every single cent, because that will be able to trace. If so-and-so gets a contract, we will be able to say this was they bought influence, and we can have it set aside. Because that way, we're able to protect the public interest.
Okay. Joshua?
Allow me to wear a politician's cap on this. And having vied for a seat, it is the most difficult task a candidate ever faces in any political seat you go for, whether an MCA, governor, or the president. Because politics is an expensive affair. Now, this is the disconnect I get. You have expectation of the public, as well as the law, that you come clean on how you raise the money, but at the same time, no formula is given or proposal given as to how you can get the money. So there's that disconnect. So the political class are faced with this difficult choice of being pragmatic and say, who can give me money? And the most difficult thing is, as a country, we haven't achieved that culture of openness and assistance. There's still a gap of confidence from the members of the public and even any other maybe Kenyans of goodwill. They have this negative attitude towards politicians in terms of, we know you are going in and you're going to make money and you're going to eat, you're going to steal.
Yeah.
So do your thing. So because of that, the politician is left to the vagaries of nature, whereby you have to run a presidential campaign. Look at our respective presidential campaign. Since 02, every election cycle, when an audit is done as to how much money was poured into campaign, every cycle is double the previous cycle. If it costed 6 billion to run a presidential campaign in 2017, this time it will cost 12 billion. So the danger here is a politician is torn in between, let me declare, let me make it open. But you have these donors who, as Prof says, they have a direct interest. To be honest, and I'll be honest with you, the people who fund politicians are those that have a direct interest in government, whether county or national, direct interest. These are the people who want to do business with government. These are the people who, as I said, kind corporate donor is someone having a direct interest. Possibly, we will want a favorable policy which will generate revenue to this person. Importantly, as Prof says, if I give you 2 million and Trevor texts me and wishes me well in campaign, Professor Migaya Ketch 2 million will mean that tomorrow he will have the audacity to call me, whatever I was doing, whether it was to pass a policy, I'll have to pick his call and listen to him and say, yes, sir, what are you expecting of me? And he say, remember what we did? So that is now the state capture. Yeah. So my answer to this, when I saw that question raised to the two deputy president, that question, I really empathize with the two, because as a politician, it's very difficult to come out openly and say, look, it is very difficult to raise money. We haven't gotten to the level of the US, and I think the US and the Western world have already achieved that. Prof has said it very well. There's a cap. The Democrats and the Republicans, there's campaign financing from individual donors, and there is group donors. The cap given for individual is strict, that even Republicans with a huge pool of billionaires, a billionaire can only give to a certain extent. The Koch brothers within the Republicans have a limit of giving to the Republican Party, and you have to declare. Whereas crowdsourcing and crowd financing. Under Obama, I think, revolutionized that bit and say, instead of relying on individual donor who will give you $2 million, let us go for the $10, $5. And then they set up a campaign secretariat that has to account to the Inland Revenue Authority, have to file returns. And any offense or any, and in fact, I remember Joe Biden faced the same concern. Trump faced the same question during debate, that your team has done this. For Kenya, we are not yet there. My proposal will be two-pronged. Number one, let us have a culture of donation. Yeah. Let us not have a problem when a candidate calls people around the table and say, let's do $1 million per plate, 100,000 per plate. Let it be open and we declare. And let each candidate after the election, this is what we think the politicians we can do very well. After the election, Kiptosh would come out and say, I participated in a county politic. We were vying for governorship. We were able to raise 15 million. Our donors were this. Because you're even accountable to the donors. Yeah. Let the donors know we gave the money, we did branding with this, we hired choppers, let it be clear. We even paid for snacks and everything. Once that culture begins, and I would want this team to start now, and I'm waiting for the presidential debate. The best thing the two presidential candidates will give us, the deputy president for Kenya Kwanza and Raila Odinga for Azimio, I wish they make that declaration in that debate and say, after this vote on August 9th, our respective secretariats will come out with the public and declare how much we were able to raise, even if it was self-funding. Yeah. This is the amount of money we use, and we can be able to account for respective. That will go a long way. That in 2027, yeah, donors will be interested in giving because there's a declaration and there's accountability how the money was done. Yeah. But as a politician, I'll tell you, it's a very difficult area to openly discuss because you are mostly reliant on well-wishers who have a direct interest in the same position.
I think what Joshua is saying is actually those two, the answer of those two presidential, deputy presidential candidates define what state capture is. So their previous answer on state capture is null.
So this is the real state capture. Prof, do you agree with that? That anybody who finances them has a direct interest, and that sort of leaves Kenyans between a rock and a hard place.
Yes,
so how do you ensure that your vote is equal to the person who's donating more?
Yeah, we have to limit the influence of these so-called kind corporate friends. If somebody has given you a chopper and you're running with it for how many?
30 days.
Or 5 months, eh?
Yeah, and a chopper per day, I hope, per hour, it's almost 100K.
Yes.
So if you're doing 8 hours a day, that's like 800,000, $1 million a day. So Prof has given 3 months. $1 million a day, 30 million a month. 3 months, it will be like 90 million. Who
pays for it?
Both sides.
At the end of the day, who pays for it?
And not one chopper?
So what I'm saying is both sides.
Yeah.
If you've been corporately funded like that, or you have personally invested that amount of money,
how do you intend to get it back?
How do you intend to get it back? Because even the money that MPs are putting in their campaigns, they can't get back for salary for 5 years. They cannot. How do they get it back? The same thing with the president. If you calculate the salary of the president, because it's a public for the 5 years, it is not enough to the money that they are using for the campaigns. Okay. So already we are facing state capture. Okay. State capture, which is at the level of corporate and institutional and personal, personal interest. Right. Now, they will go to the institutional to make sure that the accountability that we require, we don't get. And the services that we require citizens.
Allow me to still insist on that aspect of declaration. Do you know the beauty of declaration? If I declare that I received 2 million, I already expose my donor. So the public, the media will be waiting to see this 2 million, has it led to my bias? Has it led to my conflict of interest? Declaration makes the difference. That is why in the US, as soon as the election are done, whether you win or lose, your campaign secretariat has a timeline within which to file returns, just like the way you file returns to KRA.
And to publish.
It will go a long way in not, we are not seeking to criminalize donation. But by declaring it openly, we open the Pandora and say, this is what we received, Trevor gave, and don't get it wrong. Trevor gave possibly because he likes our campaign, he buys our agenda, he may have an interest, but at least we've declared, it is known. Now the public and the media and even the legislature will have an easy time to say, oh, Trevor is being given a contract because we remember he gave 2 million and we have data to show. So that is a check.
And you limit the amounts that they are able to donate.
Right.
Because that way, you reduce the distortions of the democratic process.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to hear the views on tier one of the debate. This is what Justina and Ruth had to say during this entire debate as we close on this conversation. And there's a lot of your feedback. I'll sample them in just a bit right after this.
Wewe binafsi umewahi vuta bangi?
Sijawahi na sitawahi. Sijawahi na sitawahi.
Hujawahi na hautawahi.
Zubeida usikize hapa.
Kidogo niulize swali kisha utanijibu na nitakupa dakika 2 kuweza kueleza. Hujawahi kuvuta bangi na hautawahi kuvuta bangi.
Ile tutavuta ni ya ku purify.
Na mbona mruhusu vijana na mbona mhubiri kitu ambacho wewe binafsi haukiamini? Mbona uhubiri mvinyo ilhali wewe unakunywa maji?
Haya, tulia Zubeida usikie mambo. Now, Kenyans, like I said, we are here to open up your vision to the future. There are 2 species of marijuana, or they are cousins, let me say that. Cousin moja anaitwa THC, which has the psychoactive ingredient. That is the cannabis sativa that you hear all the time, imeshikwa na watu wa DCI. But sisi focus yetu ndi CBD, or cannabis. That one gives you industrial hemp. So when you go hata venye professor anasema itapandwa kwa expressway and you pick a leaf and chew, it's only going to give a detox, let me tell you. And saiji watu wako na simu zao. Can you Google hemp seed sales in Kenya? Those products are in sale because zinakwambia zinakupatia immunity, zinakupatia sijui omega 3. Unaona, it boosts your immunity. Those products are on sale and they do not have the psychoactive ingredient yenye inafanya watu wana lose focus. That is the bang you are advocating for. And industrial hemp is used in 9 sectors, namely textile, construction, magari, makeup. Unaona hii makeup tumejipaka. The options, food and beverage, the options are many. So we are not here. And let me tell you Kenyans, consumption ama kuvuta ni kitu kidogo sana.
Ruth, unamwamini?
Simwamini. Ya kwanza amesema ni ya kupurify. I don't know what we are purifying with bang. I don't know what part we are purifying. Kwa hivyo ningetaka aweze kutuelezea kama ni damu tunaosha, kwa sababu kama ina purify na ni dawa, si tuapishwe 10th alafu 11th hospitali zifungwe kwa sababu ni dawa. Let us hear, how does it purify? I would wish to know. Nimjibu, Ruth, purifying si ati detox, kuna difference. Nimesema purify si detox. Kwa hivyo una need dawa ndio. And most medicine is made out of marijuana. Those medicine for epilepsy, cerebral palsy, pains, easy pains, watu wanakuanga chronic pains. So medicine inatengenezwa from marijuana. So already you're consuming. But nimesema purification process. Purification process, angalia, purification process ni, we have a challenge in this country, mainly corruption. 2 billion is lost every day, we were told that. But you know corruption stems from what? Scarcity mentality. There are no other options in this country to make money. So everyone wants to go into politics where the salaries are lucrative. So your scarcity mentality, unaingia, you amass for yourself. So we are going to be purifying the scarcity mentality and the bad impact of corruption, colonialism, tribalism. Hizo vitu ni spiritual and we are going to purify them. Ndio ziishe kwa hii nchi. Ndio tukianza kazi, ile siku tutaapishwa, Kenya ikuwe safi, clean slate. So we are not smoking ati kufurahisha. Justina, umesema how you don't take the substance. Na umesema that means we are all consumers of bang through medicinal,
yes,
the medicinal part of it. So that means then why are we having it legal in our constitution? So what is the reason why we have not legalized it from the beginning? That means kuna madhara ile wataalamu wanajua ndiposa hawajapitisha hapa kwetu Kenya.
Prof, is this the kind of radical thinking that we need in this country?
I don't think it is that radical because the marijuana industry world over is a multi-billion industry. And I think it is a pity that because of stigmatization, we are not seeing that we can exploit marijuana just like any other product.
Yeah.
I do not see why we shouldn't allow the marketization, if you wish, of marijuana and its products. It's already happening world over. But there's a colonial history to this. Because you'll ask yourself, why is it that other drugs can be can be sold and regulated, but not marijuana.
Yeah.
So I think the Agano Party, the Roots Party, have a point.
Okay.
Yes, and I think it's a waste that we are not taking advantage of the potential of this
marijuana.
industry. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Joshua, very briefly on this.
I consider it refreshing.
Yeah.
And nothing revolutionary about it. As Prof says it is world over. If you go to the US, it is state by state. And it's like a torpedo effect. State after the state are increasingly adopting pro-marijuana legislation. And this one thing I wish to credit the Roots Party Deputy President Justina. She ended up actually educating the public on understanding what exactly they're advocating for. And actually went, in fact, I almost felt I was in a science class. And every person who followed the debate now has a better understanding of what they are selling.
Yeah.
Because the stigmatization of what, in fact, people don't talk about it from marijuana. The stigmatization comes from the definition of just bang.
Yeah.
Bangy. It is just bangy as it is. And you could even see that they are attracting the eye of the church. And it goes back to the colonial mentality.
Okay.
Church being one of the institutions that does that. So I come from a place of being engaged in a refreshing way. And this one thing I would wish as a country we need to adopt open-mindedness.
Yeah.
Let us not be too rigid about the place of the law, because who legislates?
Okay.
The law should be more or less a reflection of the societal thinking.
Okay.
Personally, I belong to the school of thought of being a progressive, and anytime there is a legislation or there is a proposal that is progressive in nature and furthers the betterment of society, we should not just sit back and say, let me give a very simple example, leave alone even the marijuana. Even things to do with maybe grooming.
Yeah.
Previously, I remember someone with dreadlocks would not be accepted in a school.
Yeah.
A public office. You remember when we had the committee of experts, we have, was Bom Kangi.
Yes. Yeah.
And someone was trying to say Bom Kangi should not be given that chance because he has dreadlocks. And we forget that this is a qualified person.
Okay.
If we were able to surmount culturalization on matters, grooming and everything, marijuana will, and I think the beauty about it, there's nothing as constant as change.
Okay.
If you think you're fighting, the next generation, which is already with us here,
Yeah.
in primary and high school and university, for them, they're ready to listen to that, they will actually adopt it. For me, I think I see it in 5 years' time, we will be there as a country.
Okay, Kawive, close on.
I think for me, it's the good question of the moralistic society that we live in. Since I was born, I've been told, ukivuta banki, wewe ni baya, wewe ni bure, na utaharibika. So, I have never thought about it in any other way.
Yeah.
So, for the first time, it's like, oh, so bank is not necessarily evil. It's not the devil.
Yeah.
So, we are having it as an answer. But I think what Roots Party have managed to do, of course, in this debate, they dominated the debate and, the other party did not do very well. But what they've managed to do is to help us as a country start thinking outside the box, start thinking outside moralistic general condemnation of issues and of people. And I think why it's attractive to young people as a discussion is not because young people want to take banking. No. It's because they are seeing a fresh way, a new way, a new possibility of interacting with society.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's bring up some of your feedback as we close on this and see what you're saying. There's a lot of it. Let me see and try if I can run through them really quick. Pampula says Martha Karua was the best debater. She articulated the manifesto of the Azimio coalition so well. She had the interest of the people of Kenya at heart. Okay. Let's go get the next one. Bobo Tieno says, Rigathi did well than Martha Karua. He caught my attention when she tried to get it personal by attacking him. By the time she was in politics, he was a mere DO, quickly turned it to be issues ailing Kenyans. Okay? Kilimo says it was a balanced debate. I loved how the moderators were up to the task. Why had Infotrack deleted a public opinion poll? Okay? Bobo Tien again says the Roots Party running mate Mrs. Wamai did exemplary well. She articulated their manifesto very well by breaking it down one by one, especially on marijuana. For me, she outshined all the candidates. Okay. Atanas Mavuti says the deputy presidential candidate for Roots took more time explaining their manifesto than any other candidate. The second debate between Rigathi and Karua was more of personalities than their manifesto. Okay. Chalo Woodrose says, Rigathi Gachagua attacked Uhuru Kenyatta more than telling Kenyans what Kenya Kwanza is all about. He was very bitter with the head of state. He failed the integrity test. Martha Karua was very much composed and answered the questions asked perfectly. Okay? Narudino says Martha Karua branded Uhuru Kenyatta regime as utterly corrupt throughout the debate, yet she's still willing to work with the same corrupt Uhuru who doubles up as Azimio chair. Her hypocrisy sticks out a mile. Okay? Engineer Nazaro says Rigathi defended money in his frozen account while bitterly castigating President Kenyatta administration and First Family by his unscoot statements like we will be going after state capture. Okay. Isaac Mundusi says, I was shocked. Martha Karua doesn't know the current prices of fertilizer, bread and milk. Salute Gachagua, you are ready to lead, fully informed. Okelo Mwalimu, in my considered opinion, out of all the 4 deputy presidential candidates, Justina Wamae did so well. However, since our voting is ethno-cultural based, this was just but a debate. On Karua Rigathi duel, Karua did better against a wall of alternative facts. Okay. That's where we'll leave it for now. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Joshua Kipto, Nandi County Assembly Speaker. I see you want to speak, but we're out of time. Professor Migaya Kech, Advocate of the High Court. Asante sana for making time. And Kawiva Wambua, who is the Deputy Executive Director in Inuka, Kenya. That's where we'll leave it for now. Willis Bazura Buru is coming up next with financial literacy, right? How about that? See you shortly.